Welcome everyone to Actian's webinar on gaining insights from semi-structured data with Bill Inmon. Bill's the founder, president, and CTO of Inmon Data Systems. Emma McGrattan will be following Bill's presentation. Emma is the Senior Vice President of Engineering here at Actian. With that, I'll hand over to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I hope that you find the topic that we're going to be talking about as interesting as I do. So let's go ahead and get started. On the first slide, we have a red bar. And on that red bar, that is representative of all data in the corporation. That's everything. I think most people are surprised to find out that when you take a look at all data in the corporation, that in truth, only a certain amount of that data is structured information. Now, this varies from corporation to corporation, but this graph that I'm showing is representative in one way or the other of almost every corporation that's out there. When we see that we take a look at where decisions are made, I think it surprises most people to find out that the vast majority of decisions that are made in the corporation are made on 10% of the data. In fact, we have most people that have spent their life in IT have been doing nothing but looking at structured data, most of which is transaction type of data. And it comes as a surprise to these people that there's this other world over here of unstructured red data that essentially is untouched. So we say, wait a minute, if I'm only making decisions of 98% of my decisions based on 10%, something is wrong here. Shouldn't I be making important corporate decisions based on the unstructured red side of life off over here? And that's a really interesting observation, because indeed you should be using that red information to make decisions with, because as we're going to be seeing very shortly, there is a wealth of powerful information that isn't touched in your corporation today. Moving to the next slide, when we take a look at the world of unstructured data, we find out that a certain amount of that unstructured data, the semi-structured portion of the unstructured world. From the standpoint of the business person, what value is there in structured data? And this is something that corporations intuitively know it. They don't know how to go about doing anything about it. And when we look at medical records, we find that when doctors take notes and diagnosis and the things that doctors do, they make notes of reports, medication reports, procedures, diagnostics, that's there. Now, that information can be stored on a computer today. You don't need anything special to do anything with that data. But if you've got a lot of doctor's notes trying to do analysis on more than a handful of doctor's notes is very difficult to do. So as an example, we find that we can take a look at doctor's notes. We can put them into a database, and once we put them into the form of a standard relational database, then we can look at millions of records rather than a handful of records. We can look at and organize records by medication, procedure, therapy, and outcomes. So these are some of the things that can be done with semi-structured data once we get a handle on it. Now, how important is it to look at medical records? Well, that's kind of a silly question, because that's like asking how important is your health? That indeed you can improve your health by having doctors being able to have powerful information at their fingertips. And if that isn't business motivation enough, I don't know what is. However, information is vital to good healthcare. And the more informed our doctors can be, the better the health care for you and me and everybody. There's lots of other places where there's great value in semi-structured data. Let's go look at corporate contracts. I've stood in front of executives and said, do you know exactly what's in your corporate contract? Not one executive I've ever talked with says they know what's in their corporate contracts. And then I say, it's kind of strange, because isn't it your job as an executive to understand liability? And they say, yeah, we understand liability. Well, don't you think there's liability in your corporate contracts? And the answer is, oh yeah, there's liability there. Well, something's not right here. You tell me that you manage and understand liability. On the other hand, you tell me that you don't understand what's in your corporate contracts. If you are truly managing liability, you've got to understand what's in your corporate contract. You've got to be able to look at things as deadlines, penalties, payments, bonuses, and so forth and so on. And you better be able to handle millions of contracts, not just a handful. Once you put your corporate contracts into the form, your semi-structured data into the form of a computerized form, you can manage down to the penny and down to the minute everything that's in your corporate contracts. And then you find out that your management can start to answer questions that they weren't able to answer before. And you go from, can your management answer important questions? And if the answer is no, well, shouldn't your management be able to answer important questions, such as, what are the liability concerns that are held in my contracts? Another good place to find business value when it comes to semi-structured data is the internet. The internet is full of customer opinions about your company, your products, your services. And you tell me that any company, I don't care which company you are out there, you don't care about what people are saying about your company, your products, and your services. I have news for you. You are making a major strategic mistake. That hearing the voice of your customer, and the internet is a good place to hear the voice of the customer. Hearing the voice of the customer is probably one of the most important things that a corporation can do. The kinds of questions that you can answer when you are hearing the voice of your customer are such things as what products are liked, disliked, and why? What products are liked and disliked and why? What shipments are late? What packaging is attractive? In other words, the customer, if you listen to your customer, is going to tell you what you need to know to run your business better. Another good place to listen to the voice of your customer is the call center. Many corporations out there have call centers, and very few know what's actually going on in their call center. For example, you might say today, when we have our call center, we listen to 7,000 calls a day, and each call lasts approximately 4 1/3 minutes. Well, that's kind of interesting information, but that doesn't tell you what people are actually saying in your call center. Hearing the voice of the customer then is some of the really important information that you can get by listening to the voice of the customer and by finding in the world of being able to handle semi-structured data. We have customer surveys. If you've ever taken a customer survey, you typically get to fill out boxes, box 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Now, surveys are useful for the boxes you can fill out, but it turns out that in most surveys, all of the really interesting information is captured in the comments section. And the comment sections are in the form of semi-structured information. This then is by looking at and understanding your semi-structured data, this allows you to hear the voice of your customer. There are many, many other places, all of them involving semi-structured data, that you can look for valuable information. Social media, warranties, insurance claims, legal documents, etc., and so forth. So the last slide I'd like to leave you with is who needs to take a look at semi-structured information from a business standpoint? And the answer is everybody does. That there is a wealth of information there that isn't being tapped today. And if your corporation is going to be a healthy, well-run corporation, you need to start looking at your semi-structured information. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, and I think Emma is going to be the next speaker.
My name is Emma McGrattan, Senior Vice President of Engineering here at Actin. Now, I've almost been at Actin for 30 years, so Actin's been around a long time under different names. And we consider ourselves the leading hybrid data infrastructure company. So we do a really great job of managing enterprise data, and we kind of categorize this into 4 separate categories. So one huge area for focus for us right now is hybrid cloud data warehousing. So hybrid in the sense that we want to deploy on premises and across multiple clouds, because that's where your data typically lives. We have a long history in supporting mission critical data management. I'm going to talk about a couple of our customers there. We also have a suite of data integration capabilities, and that's really where the focus is going to be today. Because Actin's databases, for the most part, are relational databases. And as we talk about semi-structured data, it's essentially, structured data. It's just not sitting in tables, so it doesn't lend itself well to the relational model. And what we do within Actin is provide data integration capabilities that allow us to bring semi-structured and unstructured data sources into our data ecosystem. And we also have a growing business in edge data management. Bill mentioned IoT, and it's an area in which we're seeing massive growth, lots of data being generated there, and people want to do smarter things at the edge. So, reacting in real time as events are happening in the IoT world. So if you haven't heard of Actin, we have, as I've said, been around for over 30 years. We have over 3,000 customers around the globe. We have a support organization that provides multi-channel and multilingual follow-the-sun support. So regardless of when our customer has a problem, there's somebody who can speak their language on the end of a phone to help them. Obviously, you always try to avoid customers having problems, but when customers have to engage with our support organization, they come out of it typically very happy. We have over 95% customer satisfaction with their support engagement. So I think that's pretty good, right? Because when customers call into support, it's because they haven't been able to find the answer themselves through Google or in your documentation or knowledge base. So they're typically not a happy camper, but they come out of that experience with Actin support quite satisfied with the engagement. We're really focused on innovation, and I'm going to show you some of the fun things that we're innovating around in my engineering team. And we have over 50 patents, and that's a growing patent portfolio. Some really clever technologies that we have built within Actin engineering. We're in 250 of the Fortune 1000 today, and we're looking to grow that number. We took a strategic investment from a company called HCL Technologies. They're a $10 billion global system integrator in terms of their annual revenue is $10 billion, and they're bringing us into many of their large accounts. And what you'll see on the screen here are some of our customer logos, and if you visit the Actin website, you'll see more about the stories behind these logos. I think the one that kind of lines up with what Bill was just talking about is the first one here, which is Oxford University, where our technology is used within the Clinical Trials Services Unit at Oxford University. And they have this massive project where they have, they're collecting 5,000 data points on 500,000 individuals, right? So it could be anything from, how many drinks do you have in a day? How much do you smoke? When did you start smoking? How much exercise are you getting? Those types of questions, and collecting all of the information about those subjects in our database and providing for real-time analysis of that data. And if those of you who are following the COVID vaccine trials will be aware that the AstraZeneca trial is being done with Oxford University, and that's actually being run on the Actian technologies. I think that trial has stalled for a little bit while they investigate an issue with one of the participants in the trial, but it's our technology there, and we're very proud to engage with Oxford University in that groundbreaking work that they're doing that's so vital to all of us right now. But as you can imagine, as people are providing information with respect to their health, it has structure in that there's a set of questions that you're asking, but the answers that you get back, right, don't neatly fit into a table all of the time, because you might get a photograph of, here's a bruise that just came up, could be something like that, right? So having the ability to put structure on semi-structured data is something that we do phenomenally well, and I think it's best explained through a demonstration. So the technology that we want to talk about today is Actian Avalanche, and this is our hybrid cloud data warehouse. And we've engineered this for data-driven enterprises. And I think pretty much every enterprise that exists today is data-driven, right? We all make decisions based upon data. And I think what Bill exposed was how little of that data we're exploiting to make decisions, but nonetheless, data does drive a lot of important decision-making. We've built our technology focused on performance, and we, over time, have consistently shown that we can provide the world's fastest analytics. We do this on commodity hardware, so we were very well suited to bring the technology to the cloud, because when you think about cloud, it's nothing but commodity hardware built at massive scale. We provide a superior TCO. Part of that is because we're building upon commodity hardware, and we've done some really clever things to be able to squeeze massive performance out of just your standard servers. You don't need any specialist hardware. You don't need specialist disks or backplanes or anything like that to run our technology. Another area in which we can help with TCO is as you deploy in the cloud, right? You can scale that environment to meet your business needs at a given moment. So if you're coming into the end of quarter, as we are right now, and you want to scale up the analysis that's being done every minute because everybody's refreshing their dashboards and seeing what's going on, you can increase the compute power that's allocated to your warehouse. And then when the end of quarter is over and the books are closed and you want to get back to a more normal level of compute consumption, we have the ability to scale back. So you only pay for that peak as you're in the peak, right? And as soon as the peak subsides and you want to lower your consumption, you have the ability to do that. And I'll show you that as part of the demonstration. Hybrid deployment to us was really important. We have a lot of our customers that were on a journey to the cloud that have deployed Actian technologies on premises today. And the whole COVID situation has caused them to put a pause on migration to the cloud. And what we've been able to do with customers is to work with them to migrate applications as it makes sense for those applications to move. So the budget may not exist any longer for a wholesale migration, but we can work with the customers to say, okay, let's leave this part of your application estate and infrastructure on premises, and let's move these pieces that make sense to the cloud and show some early successes in that migration. So we have support today for AWS and Azure, and this morning we issued a press release talking about our Google early adopter program, which we're kicking off in a couple of weeks. So very excited with the relationship with Google. We're seeing a ton of interest there because we've seen it to be a very fast platform, and Google's proven to be a great partner to work with to deliver on this capability on Google Cloud. I mentioned earlier that we have native integration capabilities, and what I'm going to show you is how you can use those native integration capabilities to do something like, let's say, take some JSON files, which are, you can think of JSON as semi-structured, right? There's structure to it, all right? It's just not a neat table. And what we can do with our integration capabilities is put some structure on that, put it in a tabular format, and load it into the database, all part of the platform. And then we have a lot of customers doing advanced analytics, right? AI, ML, very important to a number of our accounts. People want to get smarter about their data and acting upon it. And our advanced analytics capabilities give us an edge in the AI and ML space. A lot of it has to do with the performance that we can provide, and the fact that because we're really fast and because we can address large data volumes, you don't have to sample data. You can actually run your models against, the entire data set, so there aren't little things that might be slipping through the cracks. And again, we can talk about that if time permits. So I think our technology is best described through a demonstration. So if you bear with me here one moment, I will bring this over, hopefully. Yes. So if we start here with Actian Avalanche, when you come into the Actian Avalanche interface, you will have two options here. One is to look at the warehouses in your environment, and the other is integrations. I have pre-populated this with a bunch of warehouses. My favorite one here is the Avalanche on Google Cloud one, because that's now something that's that we're talking about publicly. But for the purposes of this demonstration, let me show you this this warehouse. So to create a warehouse, we provide some very simple information, like where do we want this warehouse to be created. I've chosen to create this one here on the East Coast in Long Island, New York today. All of our warehouses are designed to be single tenant. So the entire infrastructure is single tenant, so that there's no chance of data leakage. But for an added level of security, we have only a set of IP addresses that you specify that can access that warehouse. So that's our IP allow list. That can be an individual IP address, like my home address here. I'm sorry, my home office IP address, or that can be a CIDR block. So if you wanted to specify a range of addresses, we've got the ability to do that. One thing I forgot to mention when I spoke about the value that we provide here is the fact that we can support an idle stop time. So let's say you have an organization where they don't work over the weekend and head out on a Friday evening and forget to shut the warehouse down. We will identify a period of inactivity of 1 hour. We have an idle probe that's constantly checking to see what's happening in the environment. And if we've identified that an hour has passed, there's been no queries run within that hour, then we can set it so that it will automatically shut down the connection. So we have support, as I mentioned already, support for AWS, Azure, and now Google Cloud. The one other thing I said I'd show you is scaling the environment. So AU is our Avalanche unit. You can think of it as the unit of horsepower of my warehouse. So an 8 AU instance is a small clustered environment. And if I wanted to scale that, I come over here to scale. And here I can say, oh, I need to, it's coming up to end of quarter. We're seeing a lot more activity on the analytics side. Let's bump that all the way to 64 AUs. And if I save this, it will bump that environment up. So we're on Microsoft Azure here. We have separation of storage and compute. And so we can scale those compute resources without having to scale any storage resources. And it will automatically scale out responsibility for the data to the additional compute resources that have come in here. So you don't have to repartition the data or reallocate data. That's all handled behind the scenes for you because it's a fully managed environment. And then, as the end of quarter processing finishes up and I'm ready to get back to, the regular business levels, we can scale that environment back down again. So what I wanted to focus on, though, while the database is fun. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry, if you will indulge me here. Built into it is a query editor, and in that query editor, we have the ability to write queries that will be automatically color-coded. We pre-populated the database with a set of flight information statistics, so that you have the ability to kind of get a feel for it without having to think about what data and queries do I want to play with. So we've pre-populated with a set of queries that you can say things like, show me the top 50 flights with the biggest average delays. So if I run that query, you'll see I get the result set here as a table. I can export that table as a JSON file. So talking about semi-structured data, and we have the ability to do that. And the other thing I can do here is we have some fairly simplistic visualization built in. So I wanted to represent this data as a bar graph. So here I'm going to have the airport code on one axis. I'm going to have the total arrival delay on the other axis. And here you'll see that I can very quickly plot the graph of information here. Our queries run typically sub-second. There's for the most part, we will produce query results in milliseconds to tenths of seconds, and very obviously there can be very complex queries that will run longer than that. But these are the types of query response times that you could expect to get from Avalanche. And in this case, we're querying a record set of 7.2 million rows. It's just a very speedy technology. technology. And we also have built into the query editor here some pretty typing. I find this structure for a query to be easier to read, so it will automatically provide that pretty typing to come up with a more readable query. So that's on the database side of things. Now, if I go in here to the integrations, we have, as I mentioned, a portfolio of data integration technologies, and we power some of the more challenging data integration problems. So one customer example would be ADP, the payroll people. And think about the complexity of the data that they're constantly dealing with, right? So payroll's not simple, right? Because you'll have employees that are salaried, and you'll have hourly employees. You'll have commission staff, you'll have staff on a bonus plan. You'll have benefits that are constantly changing as employees maybe have a new baby added to the family, get married, these types of things. So bringing all of that data in and making sure that it's accurate is a real challenge for ADP, and bringing new customers on board where they may have 100,000 employees, and all of a sudden all of that information needs to be loaded and needs to be accurate. They bet their business on Actian's technologies, and it's that same technology that powers data integration here within Actian Avalanche. So we have a bunch of templates for well-worn data integration paths. So it might be something as simple as loading a Parquet file from S3, or loading Kafka to Avalanche, something boring like an Oracle database over to Avalanche, our Salesforce accounts history. I mean, lots of opportunities to bring data in from a variety of sources. But the one that I'm going to focus on now is our JSON capability. So when we come into our JSON data loader, and JSON is a semi-structured data interchange language, I'm going to work with a data set here from SpaceX. So if you go to the SpaceX data site, what you'll see is that they have some really cool data sets available to you. The one that I was playing with is their launch information. And within the launch information, there's a ton of really cool data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, okay, I want to get this link here through which I can get information on past launches. So I go into my JSON data loader. I'm going to choose to set up a data source. I'm going to provide it with a web URL. So I'm going to give this a name very imaginative, like SpaceX launch data. Because you're all watching, I can't type. Okay, and then I'm going to come down here and provide it with the URL that I'm using to get the data. So I'm going to say get launch data, and now I will add that data source. Okay, so now that's set up. So the next thing I'm going to do is to say, okay, so I have a data source, and as you saw earlier, it's got a bunch of JSON data in there. Now what I'm going to do in the data loader is to set up a table. So I'm going to create a new table for this. I'm going to call it my data source is that SpaceX launch data, providing that URL that we have. I'm going to say, I want to look at all of the data in here and all of the indices that are part of that. And I'm going to pick out some interesting pieces to this, right? So I think maybe we'll start with something like the launch date. So let's take the launch date in a local time format. So we'll pick that one. I have to give it a name. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, so then I'm going to say, the launch site is interesting, and then the site name. So here it'll show me what that site name looks like, and I can't make any sense of what's provided here as examples of what that particular key value pair is going to look like. So instead, I'm going to come here at the long name. So I'm saying, oh yeah, this is something that I can actually understand. So I'm going to pick the launch site for the launch. I think it'd be good to know something about the rocket that we're using. So let's say we want to pick on the rocket name. and that type of rocket I think could be interesting too. And then the second stage, right? So what's in the payload? So let's take a look at what's in the payload, and we can say, you know, tell me something about who's the customer, right? Who are we carrying this payload for? So let's say, oh, actually maybe the nationality. So as you play with this, you'll actually find there's some fascinating stuff in here. So so now what I'm going to say is this is the information that I'm interested in taking from this data set. Now, I could have chosen to take all of the data in here, just for the purposes of the demo. I'm choosing just to take a subset of the data that's provided here. So now I've got my my table defined. And now for the destination. So as I go into the destination, what you'll see here is I've already got an Avalanche database set up, as I showed you earlier. When we come down in here, I was playing with COVID data earlier because I'm kind of obsessed with that too. But when we come down here, you'll see I've got my my launch data. And what I can do here is I can say I want to push the data into the database. I can take a sample of that data and I can push the sample of the data, or I can schedule it. I can say, you know, I want this data to be refreshed every 30 seconds, every 24 hours, whatever makes sense for the particular use case that I'm dealing with. That's all, you know, very easily scheduled. And you'll notice here there's no coding, right? I'm a SVP of engineering and I've forgotten my coding, but you know, really simple even for me to use here. And now when we go in here and we say our destinations, right? So I showed you I could choose Avalanche as a destination, and because I'm dealing with just a subset of the data here in my example, I'm going to just say, oh, download it. Let me see what this data looks like inside Excel. And when I come into Excel, what we'll see is, hang on a second, we'll open this up. Right, so we have the launch date, we've got the launch site, longer descriptive name, we've got the rocket name, we've got the rocket type, and we've got the country of origin of the payload that was aboard that rocket. Now, there's a ton of information in here. You choose what makes sense for you to pull out of it, or what interests you. I didn't show you all of the flexibility that this interface provides, but there's a ton of really cool stuff that we can do within here, and really it's limited only by your imagination as to what you want to do with the data. We can put some filters on here, we can put some formula in place, we can swap some things around, we can exclude certain data, and we can merge it. So the ability to do some enrichment, you can do all kinds of really cool stuff within the interface. But what the end result here is going to be taking that JSON data, taking the elements of it that's interesting to you, or taking all of it, and then loading that into Actian Avalanche so that you can do advanced analytics on the data set. So that's kind of a bit of a whirlwind tour of the Avalanche environment, but it's something that's very powerful, right? And that makes JSON much more usable, because as you're dealing with JSON files, what you'll soon discover is that they can become very complex, and levels of nesting can lead to a lot of confusion. And having a tool like this that makes it easy to work your way through that JSON data can be quite valuable, and that is the reason why we've made it part of Actian Avalanche. So, so if you're not familiar with JSON, I probably should have done this slide first. It's JavaScript object notation is what JSON stands for, and it's typically an array of objects that exist within a main JSON object. That array can be quite complex. As I mentioned already, we've got things like keys that have arrays of numbers in them. We've got you know, key value pairs, and just a really simple way of exchanging data for machines, for the human to make sense of it. It's not always simple, and tools like the Actian Avalanche JSON loader make it really easy to make sense of this. Certainly, it's a lot easier than XML, which was the first data interchange format that I was working with, but not exactly human readable, right? So so the ability to make sense of it with the Actian Avalanche data loader is something that I think you could have fun with if you have a challenge with semi-structured data. So the data loader, you know, I focused on the URL ability to just pull data, providing a URL. But there's a whole host of other data sources supported in there. And what we'd love for you to do is to play with it. We offer a $500 free trial with Actian Avalanche. So if you visit the Actian website, you can sign up for that free trial, and you can play with our Actian Avalanche as well as the JSON loader. We've made it really simple to pull data from a variety of sources. So Mongo's there, there's SaaS applications in there, social. Bill was talking about the fact that a lot of your customers' experience with you can be captured from social data, marketing data, S3, Parquet, whatever it may be. Any source pretty much we can get to with our Actin integration capabilities. Any user can use this, right? So there's no coding, as you saw, right? I was able to get some interesting data out of that data set just through clicking around within the data. And it's incredibly simple to use. And we also have the ability to as I showed you, stream that data in, or to set up a schedule where you would load that data in batches into the Actin Avalanche environment. So super simple to use, provides the ability to put semi-structured data into a tabular format, and then you can run your standard tools against it, right? So once I have that in tables, I can do things like run Looker or Tableau or Power BI, whatever it is, against it. So a little more about Actian Avalanche. We designed Actian Avalanche to deliver high performance, but without requiring the user to have to do a whole lot to get that performance. So the design goal was that customer would load their data into their environment, point their analytics tool at it, and just go. There should be no requirement to build materialized views or to create indexing schemes. We automatically index all of the data coming into the environment. You don't need to generate cubes to deliver cube-like performance. That's how fast we are. We'll give you the performance you typically get with a cube, but without the requirement to build cubes. We also have the ability to provide support for real-time updates. So if you have a busy manufacturing plant and you want to constantly update the analytics environment with activity from the factory floor, that's how fast we are. We can support tens of thousands of updates per second coming into the environment, and you can analyze that data in real time. On the list here, no hints, no special SQL required. It's standard SQL. It's designed for you to just load your data and then query it. You don't have to have any kind of a advanced experience in tuning database environments. So that's what it's all about, and it's all delivered on commodity hardware. So no specialist hardware required to get this really fast performance. The technology Avalanche is a fully managed service. We do have an on-premises version of that as well that you can run, and it's really simple and really fast. So here is some proof of the speed that we talk about, the performance that we deliver. So we employed a third party to run a benchmark, and we chose a TPC-H benchmark. So TPC is the Transaction Processing Performance Council, and it's an industry body made up of a lot of companies. So the database and analytics vendors, the tools vendors, the hardware vendors, the operating system, we're all part of it. And what we do is we define workloads that are representative of particular database challenges, and those workloads become benchmark tests. So TPC-H is a decision support benchmark, and it has medium to complex queries that are typical of any industry. So it's not designed to be industry specific. It's designed to be something that's representative of the types of queries that would be run in any industry. This benchmark was run at 10 terabytes. So that's 10 terabytes of raw data. And they ran it against Snowflake, Redshift, and Actian Avalanche. The first run of the set of tests was for a single user. And what you'll see is the results here represented in the top graph. For Snowflake, that single user run took almost 3,000 seconds. For Avalanche, it's 349 seconds. Redshift, 632 seconds. We are significantly faster than Snowflake, so over 9x in that case. We then scaled the environment to 20 concurrent users, right? So like very few organizations will have a single user running all of their analytics. Typically, businesses want to provide all of their business decision makers with access to all of the data they need to make the best decision for the business. So 20 concurrent users with Avalanche. That set of queries took almost 2,000 seconds. For Snowflake, it took almost 22,000 seconds. So, again, almost a over 9x performance advantage over Snowflake. Now, there's two ways of looking at that, right? You could say, wow, I'd love to be 5 times faster than I am today. I don't have to go all the way to 9x. So what you could do is you could say, I would like to run on a fraction of the infrastructure that I'm paying for today. So maybe I scale back my infrastructure by half, right, that I'm running Snowflake on, for example. Scale the infrastructure back by half is going to halve your costs, but put Avalanche in there in place of Snowflake, and you're still going to come out a couple of times faster than your Snowflake would have. We're so confident in our performance with respect to this that we have an offer in place whereby we will cut your Snowflake bill in half, and we'll guarantee that. So we'll almost certainly in every case do better than that, but our legal team didn't want to commit to more than cutting your Snowflake bill in half. And I can't think of an organization that doesn't want to save money today, and that ability to, without sacrificing any of the capabilities and actually getting the additional data integration capabilities like that JSON loader that we just showed you, at a fraction of the cost you're paying for Snowflake, should be quite attractive. The other thing that we've done with Avalanche is we've designed it for supporting thousands of users. What we wanted to do was to kind of recognize the fact that every organization is providing their business decision makers with access to the data and with tools that enable them to do some ad hoc querying. So the days of canned reports are long behind us. People want to be able to drill into the data and make their own discoveries. Providing the ability to do this for large numbers of users is a design point for Actian Avalanche. We also have the ability, because of the performance that we can deliver as we go into to machine learning, we provide the ability to iterate on analysis and do that in seconds or even sub-second, and provide for lots more iterations on running that. The data integration capabilities gives us the ability to pull in data from a massive variety of sources. With the semi-structured sources, we can put some structure on, some tabular structure on those and load them into relational tables so that they're more easily queryable. If you have batch processing that's done, we can do that significantly faster. We can improve accuracy because you don't need to sample. Because we're so fast and because we've built this for large data volumes, you don't need sampling. So as you're running through these models, they're going to be far more accurate than they would be with competitor technologies. And then we say 10 times the data at the same cost as you're paying today. Or as I said, you could go to half the cost that you're paying today and still get a almost 5x performance improvement. So yeah, this offer to cut your Snowflake bill in half, if you visit us at actian.com/avalanche, you can learn more about that. But to me, it's it's our legal team said it's cutting the bill in half. You could do much better than that. You can cut it further than that and still outperform the environment that you have today. So price performance is something that we're really proud of. So it's not just the raw performance we deliver, but we do it at a price point that's super competitive and certainly a much less expensive price point than Snowflake. The Actian Avalanche Connect is that ability to connect to a variety of data sources, and that's all included within the footprint. So as you saw when I logged in, I had my warehouses and I had my integrations, and it was all ready to go. So Actian Connect, gives us the ability to address data in a variety of sources. So we've got data lakes, we've got, it might be something like Hadoop, or it could be that you're using S3 as a data lake, right, or ADLS. You've got your Parquet file sitting in there. We've got the ability to reach in, take the data from there. SaaS applications like Salesforce, maybe you want to get your customer contacts table and bring that in for a marketing campaign. We've got the connectors to do just that. The on-premises applications like SAP and Oracle are not going anyplace. We provide connectivity into those more mature applications to pull data into the environment from there. REST API-driven connectivity allows you to get to your custom apps, your apps that are probably more bespoke, maybe they're industry-specific. Streaming with Kafka, and we're the ability to constantly bring in, it might be IoT data, it might be sensor data, pulling all of that in here. As I mentioned earlier, we sit on top of AWS, Azure, and now Google Cloud. We also provide support for an on-premise footprint. So if you're running, it might be a single Windows or Linux machine that you're running, we can run on that, or all the way up to your largest clusters. So built for that deployment flexibility. In terms of tooling we support, on the ETL side, it's Informatica, DataStage, Talent, anything that supports an ODBC or JDBC interface to a database. Typically, when it comes to loading data, you want to be as fast as possible. So we work with the tools vendors to make sure that that we have that native integration built in. For the business analyst, Looker is very popular, as is Tableau. Also Power BI, MicroStrategy, Click. All of those tools are certified for use with Avalanche, with custom connectors in many cases. And as I say, with ODBC and JDBC, pretty much any tool that can access a SQL database is just going to work. And then for the people working within the data ecosystem, support for the KNIME workbench for Jupyter Notebooks, Python, Spark, and Scala, and so on, all provided for, all works really well out of the box. You don't have to learn and become an expert in this technology to be successful in using it. So as I mentioned, our Google Cloud launch happened earlier today. I'm sorry, the announcement happened earlier today. And if you visit the Actian website, you have the ability to sign up for our early access program. This is a program that my engineering team will be supporting, and we're very excited with Google Cloud. As I mentioned, it's about 20% faster, and so depending upon the query, it could be anything up to 30% faster than the other cloud platforms. So we've already proven some great numbers with AWS and Azure. Google's even faster again, so that's been great. So that additional performance means that our price performance equation is even better than on the other platforms, and it's integrated with the rest of the Google Cloud ecosystem. So if you want to use Looker, it's all there, it's ready to go. Data proc for your Spark jobs, that's all built into it. So very excited to get people signed up for that early access program. So if you're interested in that, do please get in touch. We'd love to have you participate. So if we were to sum it up, right? So we've built Actian Avalanche to deliver on performance. So it's that excellent performance for the most complex queries, also the performance of loading data into the environment, right? So you saw how quickly I was able to make sense of that JSON data, right? And that was a fairly small data set. SpaceX haven't had that many launches, but for larger data sets, the larger the data set, the better our performance differentiation is. So the more data that we're dealing with, the better you'll see that performance and value equation come across. We've designed it initially for on-premises deployment, and then we reimagined it, Dockerized it, deployed it in the cloud. Mentioned the separation of storage and compute, the auto shut off of resources if they're not being used. So really thinking about the modern enterprise where you've got data across a variety of sources. You could now have one technology for analyzing all of those sources without having to move the data around and do things that right now might be unnatural or maybe not safe from a security perspective. So that multi-cloud and on-premise hybrid message is really important, we believe. And then all of this designed for superior TCO. You don't have to go by third-party tools for data integration or data ingestion. It's all built into the platform. And as you saw, it's incredibly simple to use. So that is what the Actian Avalanche hybrid cloud data warehouse is all about. That high-speed analytics with built-in data integration capabilities, so that you can bring all of your structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data into that data ecosystem, so that you're making the best decisions for the business. So that was my part. So back to you, Pradeep.
Great, thank you, Emma. So while you go over to the Q&A tab and review the questions that came in, I just remind everyone that the event is recorded, and we will be making the replay available to you so you can share it with your colleagues who couldn't make it. And also the slides will be made available as a PDF as part of the follow-up email. So that's one of the first questions we got. Emma, are you able to look at the Q&A list?
Yeah, sure. So first question is, what's the query language? And I can't believe I missed that one. Yeah, so it's it's a SQL database, and we actually chair the SQL language body at the moment. So Actin is very much standards focused. So it's all of the SQL core and analytics extensions are all provided for. And what that means is that if you start writing applications for Actian Avalanche and you are a SQL programmer, everything that you will typically have used in the past in structuring your queries will be available and will just work. So standard SQL is the native language here. Next one is, are we suggesting a hybrid data warehouse deployment, keeping in mind customer PII data, etc.? Yes, so that's a great question. So when we talk to customers in certain verticals like healthcare and financial services, particularly those that are subject to regulatory compliance requirements that have large fines associated with them if they don't comply to those requirements. In many cases, their preference is to keep complete control of the data and to keep that data within their data center. And what we have with Actian Avalanche is the ability to provide this same capability inside the data center as we deliver inside the cloud. And what we see happening is that you have this bifurcation, right, where you've got certain data sets are going to remain on premises. You've got a lot of fun stuff that's happening in the cloud, and you want the ability to bring all of that data together. And Actian's hybrid query capability gives you the ability to write a single query that can bring data together from all of those various data sources. So yeah, PII data is something that we support inherently within cloud or on-premise. We provide for things like column level encryption, data masking. So if you had something like a credit card number or social security number where you wanted to mask all but the last 4 digits of that number for masking for PII purposes, that's all built into the platform. Our encryption is AES 256-bit. We also have initialization vectors and so on as part of that. So a very secure environment, and we have some very sensitive data deployments today that depend upon our technology for protecting and securing some very important information. So I mentioned earlier the CTSU, the Clinical Trial Services Unit at Oxford University. You can imagine there are many bad actors trying to get their hands on the data within that environment, and we provide them with everything that they need to secure that and to provide for GDPR compliance. Okay, so next question is, why do you have a hybrid data warehouse approach? What's its savings in terms of TCO? So the hybrid approach we believe in because as we talk to prospects, they want to have the ability to deploy the analytics wherever it makes sense, right? Wherever the data lies. So they may have some marketing applications that are running within Azure, so all of their marketing data is there. They may have their customer data that they want to keep inside their data center. They may have some other applications running within AWS on maybe it's customer churn analysis, something like that. So we believe that by providing the customer the ability to keep their data where it makes sense for them and to avoid having to move data around, and because data movement has cost associated with it, both in terms of the cost of the data ingress and data egress, as well as the time, right? So you're going to lose time as you're moving all of that data around. So having the ability to avoid moving that data around certainly helps with the TCO, but also data migration projects can be very expensive. And unless the platform that you're running today is becoming obsolete and you have a real dire need to get off of it, there's very few organizations organizations that are in the current economic climate undertaking migrations. So what people want to be able to do is to spin up new projects in environments like the cloud, where you can very easily scale the cost, right? So if business isn't going the way you want to, you can scale back on the resources that you're using, and there's no upfront sunk cost to doing that. So we believe, for a variety of reasons, that TCO driven by the hybrid platform is something that is quite compelling. So there's a how do you handle keys of different types between different data sets? So yeah, we can set up a more complex demonstration of this capability. Today was just kind of a teaser for what it can do, but we do have some quite advanced abilities there to handle the mapping of keys of different types, and you can represent objects in many different ways. Is there integration with something like Power BI or Tableau, or do you have to upload a CSV from Actin? Yeah, we do have integration with both Power BI and Tableau. And if you're using the latest version of Tableau, when you go into the connectors, the new connectors are called tacos. Actin, because the list is arranged alphabetically, is the first one that's in there. So you don't have to use any Actin specific tools for getting to the data sources. You can use whatever your business is using today and whatever makes sense for you. There is a question here about how do we compare to Oracle Stream Analytics, and I'm not familiar with that, so I'll have to take a look at that and get back to you with an answer on that. Very interested in understanding data integration with SAP non-HANA. Yes, what method is used, batch or real time? So we have customers today that are running on top of SAP, and they use a change data capture mechanism to load the data from the SAP database. So there are a couple of customers running it, and I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but they're all on Oracle databases. So we have a partner called HVR. It's a company based out of San Francisco, stands for High Volume Replicator, and they're able to feed that data in real time as those transactions are happening from Oracle into Avalanche and perform real time analytics on it. One of those customers has one of the biggest ERPs that I can imagine, and they're running all of that on top of an Oracle database and feeding that in real time into Actian Avalanche, and we're able to keep up with the rate of data being generated. So when you say 3 cloud platforms are supported, are you referring to the cloud environments provisioned by customers? I know this is a fully managed service. So if you come to Actian.com and sign up for a free trial, as you go into the interface to create a warehouse, you'll have an option to create one on AWS, Azure, and if you get accepted for the early adopter program, Google will be there as well. But no, these are public cloud environments. We will set up that fully managed service for you within that cloud environment, and we'll take care of that for you. So I think with that, we are out of time. Okay.
So yeah, with that, thank you, Bill, for joining us. It was a privilege to have you on the webinar.
Yeah, Bill, thanks so much.
And Emma, thank you very much for presenting and handling the Q&A. Any questions we didn't get to, we'll make sure somebody follows up with you. Thank you, everyone, for your time today, and hope you enjoyed the content.